Nama Guru Jechamne Kuncho Tamjeji Sangjizu Lama Chorandu Jong Kawa Jinjil Hui Jong Na Tsangtsing Tikbi Venena Min Hyomle Chodar Jobayi Sem Gunji Kangan Tangbala Yul Naso Pitokbi Chunzinishar Te Chorchung Yigi Risuti Chon Tame Namji Dunghalla Ten Tarme Kora Ramkorwa Ndi Samjin Zume Yizakol Gun Tarbarandubi Lo Jejang Rangsem Jeja Chunchungai Jong Pembi Jiwa Ngomato Dunimi Jundur Nganjurse Ten Zimbranyambi Loibumba Pangtoji Juji Tongbar Shar Tadubji Namji Jinjuba Joji Chitadu Norchongin Damisun Ranju Matulwa Didula Duzi Jurvashin Chaplume Lazo Namji Tu Pajesu Pui Labai Tuji Senteng Towaranzo Jekaju Gomin Namtrala Mong Daja Lu Yo Chima Tup Che Kunzab Nawa Chi Juma Ne Mahamudi Sangsamo Nbezodra Yondur Tundamba Cho Minjur Deshin Shayeser Tuhanamgin Chodin Dedongar Paldo Jitsimbi Jessiche Dan Drowa Kinjin Show. One of the song from Kaju Kurunso, just as an auspicious beginning, I thought I should read it in the original language. Gur in Tibetan, and I think in Sanskrit, Doha. I guess you can call it songs. You can translate it as songs of great realized being. Is very common, especially in the Vajrayana Buddhism, and most especially in the Kagyu tradition. In fact, Milarepa often is referred as Tepaka, which means one that brings joy by hearing. I myself grew up in a Kagyu family. My mother's family is a Kagyu Drupa Kagyu tradition. In fact, I think I grew up in two sort of hard-line, fundamental Kagyu and Nyingma family. So, growing up with my grandfather, my mother's father, that is, I'm quite familiar with the Gur, the dohas, the songs. Of course, for us, when we were growing up, it was an event. And usually, there will be quite an elaborated celebration. At times, it involves almost excessive drinking. And I remember many great yogis and yoginis getting carried away by probably the Bhutanese rice wine, but also the songs of the great Kagyu fathers. This I clearly remember. They would go on like so long. But because there wasn't in much other entertainment options those days, I remember enjoying participating in them, just observing. And I remember some of them have a wonderful voice. Only now I'm just beginning to appreciate its power and blessing and meaning and pricelessness of these great songs. And I'm sure what I have realized is very little, and there's still more to go. We live in this world that believes that if no pain, no gain, isn't it? We believe in this. We grow up in this kind of world that believes in this logic that no pain, no gain. And we dare not think that there is actually a lot of gain through no pain. That's unthinkable. We dare not think this. But these guys, the Kagyu forefathers, they have a way of complete gain and no pain. So if we can sort of even begin to appreciate this, then we will know the depth and the vastness of these songs. And it is so appropriate to deliver these messages through songs, because and this is something that I quote Gidun Chappell again and again. And he said, because we live in inside this small box. We live in this box of overly believing in things that are believable, and the box of overly not believing in things that are not believable. So this is why the lot of the things that are delivered through these songs if it is not through the songs, we will not hear them. We will not, because we are just so much in this box. Songs, romance, sex probably, are one of those few things in our mundane world that brings us closer to going out of this box. But we immediately rush back inside the box. I'm sure many of you have been in love or in love now, or will be in love in the future. You will realize when you are in love, everything that doesn't make sense makes sense. Things that are so ridiculous are not ridiculous anymore. Everything. Even a dead leaf is inspiring. Breeze, just everything, whatever comes along makes you, I know, everything, even the emotion, sadness makes you feel good. Because you're kind of on the edge. Just you are about to get out of the box when you are in love, I think. But always we will rush inside the box. This is why one will realize no better way to express what need to be expressed in these songs other than through singing. I was reading the colophon, and I think before we talk about forward, I think we should also talk about colophon. And I actually don't know. I'm sure many of you, the older practitioners and students, I'm very sure that you know how to appreciate. But younger generations, I don't know what this means to you. I'm here. I was talking to Larry yesterday. I'm here, and I cannot really say that I'm here with a, right and good motivation. Good motivation, right motivation is so difficult. But nevertheless, even though, as Beck was saying, although I've realized that I must be really getting old because I'm actually beginning to like Halifax. Among other things like English garden. Halifax looks like it is appealing, but still, this is not it's not a destination that I will put effort. But still, I'm here because I think I'm a Buddhist jihadi. And this is not really a right motivation. There is a sense of competitiveness. There's a sense of needing to increase and energize the Buddhism, as there's that. I cannot say it's a right motivation. It's more like a religious fanaticism or patriotic, if you want to use a better word. And so, for me, Buddha Dharma, going out to the larger world is very important. And when I look at where Buddha Dharma is now and where it has been, I think us Tibetan Lamas, we have been very good in many different aspects, but in certain aspects we have been quite weak. And maybe understandably, because certainly you feel that certainly the Tibetans have felt that the culture and the identity of Tibet and the Tibetans is endangered. So therefore you feel that Tibetan culture needs to be preserved. So the Tibetan Lamas like myself, as we go out to different world, and even though we are supposedly sharing or delivering the wisdom of the Buddha, the big chunk of our activity involves a lot about Tibetan culture, Tibetan stuff. It's understandable to a certain extent. But and I was recently in Berlin talking to Rigpa groups, and this is what I've been telling them. If we get so entangled with the Tibetan culture, this is going to be a big hindrance to propagate the Buddha Dharma. See, chances of you guys becoming Tibetan in this life is 0. No matter what you do, you can try to act like a Tibetan, wear like a Tibetan, eat like a Tibetan, talk like a Tibetan. No matter what you do, you will not become Tibetan. But chances of you becoming enlightened overnight is possible. Really, overnight. That's very possible. Anyway, culture doesn't have much weight, because culture is not absolute. Truth, such as all compounded things are impermanent, is not changeable. It hasn't changed yet. The Tibetan culture, the Tibetan way of doing things has changed so much. And it's changing all the time. So you cannot really trust that. So somehow we need to bring the Buddha Dharma to the West, kind of not totally dependent on a specific culture. But then again, if you lose this religiosity aspect of Buddha Dharma completely, then we have again some problem. After all, we are human beings. The only way we can approach to anything is through a certain culture, through a certain ritual, through a certain jargon. So completely alienating oneself with this sort of seemingly religious aspect of Buddha Dharma is also very dangerous. So when I look at this, now this is the Buddhist jihadi thinking. When I look at this, what Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche what he has brought to you guys, what he has contributed to the Buddha Dharma is just, I don't know, a lot of younger generations here, I don't know whether, I still believe, even the older generations, I don't know how much you can appreciate this. It's mind-boggling. I was just talking to someone else. Trungpa Rinpoche can be looked at from different angle. I had a very heated argument in Oxford University when I was teaching there. Someone who was purely, not in favor of Trungpa Rinpoche's many manifestations. I was having a really heated argument. Of course, I enjoy being devil's advocate. And really, and not only in England, but even within the Tibetan society, there are people who look upon Trungpa Rinpoche in many different angles. And I'm sure different people do. If you read Diana's book about Trungpa Rinpoche and herself, that's her angle. Now, when I look at Trungpa Rinpoche, then I have my own way, my way of looking at him. See, for me, my generation, bringing the Dharma to the West, some of the lamas, and especially Trungpa Rinpoche, has already paved the way. So fairly, it should be easy for people in my generation to bring the Buddha Dharma to the West. But still we find it challenging, still. So when I think as a Tulku, as a Rinpoche, who is trying to bring the Dharma to West, or some where Buddha Dharma is not known, it's a big challenge, really. Now, you can imagine one of you going to Tibet or Bhutan or somewhere and try to convince those Tibetan and Bhutanese nomads to appreciate and understand and live with Shakespearean language, let's say. And that's just a language, just poetry is some twisted language. That's all you are supposed to propagate. How much difficulties you will have. So if you think like this, and then creating this, going out of the cultural box that I was talking earlier, and really bringing the quintessential Buddha Dharma to your hand. At the same time, there is that religious aspect. Orthodox level, really. Things that has background, things that has a root all the way to 2,500 years ago. So when I look at the life and the activity of Trungpa Rinpoche, okay, here there is this cult, things like banners, pins, khakis, and drills. All this world. And then, on the other hand, we have many things like a Chakra Sambhara, Vajra Yogini, and among many presenting amazing sort of teachings, his own and also his forefathers, such as Reign of the Wisdom. This is something that we really need to appreciate, and we cannot forget this. In the sutras, I have read that the bodhisattvas, for one shloka of the dharma, the bodhisattvas have forsake their family, kingdoms, so on and so forth. Buddha himself, for the sake of understanding the truth, renounced his palace life. And not just the Buddha, his own follower in the ancient India, his own follower such as Shantadeva, Atisha Dipamkara, they all renounced their materialistic, worldly life in pursuit of the truth, in pursuit of understanding something much more profound and meaningful than material life. Also in Tibet, the former kings of Tibet, I can safely say, have placed the Buddha Dharma as their most important national agenda, so to speak. King Tisong Dewitzen's national budget, 99% is spent on bringing the Buddha Dharma. If you look at individual beings, both in India and also in Tibet, and many other places also, no doubt, if you look at the hardship and the sacrifice of the great Telopa, Naropa, and Marpa, and the Milarepa, all these Today, people like you and me, when we read this, because, as I was saying earlier, we live in this box, believing in things that are, overly believing in things that are believable, and overly not believing in things that are unbelievable. Hardship and sacrifice of these great masters of the past, when we read this in the text, for us, they're almost like a legend, myth, inconceivable. I have to say I'm blessed for having met within my own lifetime some masters that have their dedication, their importance to the dharma, their sacrifice to the worldly life. I have witnessed myself. And I'm sure in about 50 years' time, what I have witnessed, if people speak, they will only think it is a legend. Trungpa Rinpoche is coming to this part of the world, and being able to convince and thus convince or maybe sell the idea of non-duality, sell the idea that a kilo of a garbage is very much kilo of jewel. To a world or a society that is so used to materialism and dualism, must have had so much hardship. So much hardship. But for these people, the world of wisdom way to understand the truth, the absolute truth. In other words, spiritual path is utmost important. Time, energy, everything is spent on that. My own gurus, when I look back, I remember hardly, none at all actually, they spent energy and time and contemplation on fishing for praise, watching out for or being careful about criticism from others. making themselves a comfortable nest is never the big agenda. Because they have tasted the taste of this truth and seeing beings like us who are totally confused and defiled and therefore compassion gushing out from their incredible wisdom alone must be the reason why not only the great forefathers of the masters, such as the Kagyu forefathers, have sang these songs, but not only that, later masters such as Tungur Rinpoche have translated this and presented these. I'm not a big fan of Dharma book. They kind of make me drowsy. And especially preface and forward, I always skip. But it is my own good karma, have to be, that one day in Bir, while I was completely bored and not having anything to do, and these Shambhala publishers, they keep on sending me all these books that they printed, and then among there's Rain of Wisdom, which I thought, okay, why not I flip through. So this time, my own good karma, really. Usually forwards I always skip. But I was reading the forward. And there, what Trungpa Rinpoche, for me, what he proclaimed and what he declared are actually, I don't know the other readers, but for Tulkus and Rinpoches like me and the younger generations must take his forward as advice, as sort of the guiding light. This is how a Tulku or a Rinpoche or supposedly the teachers, that's how they have to think. Janitor, right? Is it? I have been left out in the cold as full-time garbage man, janitor, diaper service, and a babysitter. That's how younger lamas, Dulkus, Rinpoches, we should have aspiration to think like this. And this is an amazing proclamation. So finally, I alone have ended up as a captain of this great vessel. As many of these great masters do. There's always this incredibly genuine humility, no arrogance at all. But always there's amazing, majestic confidence. So the sort of, how shall I put it? This technique and the skillful means of confidence and the humility. Within the few sentences, we can read this. Like all the songs that are in the Rainbow Wisdom, I really don't think his foreword is a composition. Many of these songs, I don't believe, is composed. I don't know whether you understand or you appreciate this, but they gush out. You understand? It's not like with a pencil and a paper and a, eraser and okay, and then erase and then. Telopas didn't do it that way. Naropas didn't do it this way. It's a wisdom mind gushing out, just because there's so much compassion. It just cannot, it just comes out. And we have some merit that when this spills out, when this rain of wisdom, when this thing gushing out, when it is coming out, I think some of us have enough merit to, at least take part and receive this blessing. Anyway, this wasn't planned. This just came out from. So now we will. Did I take too much time? No. Okay. Oh my goodness. It's already 8:30. Okay. So, anyway, I was thinking to, I was doing some homework. Like before I came here, I thought, okay, what can I share with you guys? And I was reading the Gaju Gurcho itself. But it's a bit like, where to begin? Just single one of them. And then I stumbled into this colophon and totally forgot the songs. The colophon itself. Aho, tubji chime kaju rimpoche, semji dunghal sirbe amirta, tharlam dembi tepen che jibu sabsali yeshi nyingla pendi to. even in the common Tibetan people, the Tabu Kagyu lineage, basically Kagyu lineage, is very well known for producing great realized being. It is something that cannot be disputed. Just like you cannot really dispute the Gelupa and the Sakyapa tradition producing a lot of Mahapandita, which is like scholars. There are not many practitioners and realized beings that can be used as an example like Milarepa in Tibet. Milarepa unanimously is considered one of the greatest Mahasiddha in Tibet. Semchi dunghal sebe amrita. Realized being, having a realized being in our life, or in other words, in our world, is the only source of relief from the suffering, especially mind suffering. And this, see, we can have so many scholars who knows about mind, who can talk about mind, who can talk about the truth. But they will not be the source of relief from the mind suffering. But when we have a realized being, Mahasiddhas, Siddhas basically, you can trust them. And this is why I guess Rinpoche was expressing his incredible joy through the words such as Aho. What a joy that your profound, brilliant wisdom has entered my heart. This is a big proclamation again. I have no guts to say this. I have guts to say that I rejoice and I'm so fortunate that I have been part of this lineage. I have received teachings from these lineage masters. And then he goes on. Choji yangsar jebi tachunga, choji jinlap kone chojindu, chodang yerme druba tobadang, chodar drogin droni jinjilop. This little one was born as your great-grandson and is sustained by your blessing alone. Grant your blessings so that I may attain the siddhi of being inseparable from you and be able to liberate all beings as you do. This little one himself is born as your great son, great grandson. When he talks about your church 진압군, church 양서제 비타 정도. He can point when he says, "I am born as your great grandson." He's referring to great Telopa, Naropa, Marpa, Mila, Gampopa, all these great beings. And we will talk about, I will extract some of the songs and see whether we will be able to understand why they are great beings. Incredible beings these are. And Trungpa Rinpoche is saying that, I'm your great grandson. And many of you, Trungpa Rinpoche's student, you can claim that you are great grandson or daughter. And if you, not just Telo, Naro, Marpa, Mila, if you look at the lineage gurus, amazing, illustrious and luminous, incredible. I mean, Trungpa Rinpoche's guru, for instance, like Lama Kangshar. I hope the younger generation here, because Lama Kangshar, Khenpo Kangshar is something that you can be proud of as your great-grandfather. And you cannot afford to forget his name. Amazing. Priceless words coming from him. All these are not planned, by the way. I don't know, somehow I'm trying hard not to go in there, but somehow this comes back. We will take a break and then we will go to the actual songs. I will try. Is that okay? 10 minutes break. So, as I said, this is like, where can we begin? I was just teaching a sutra in New York. And in that sutra, Manjushri asked Buddha, what will obscure us? What can, when things goes wrong, obviously, there must be an obscuration that obscures our thinking and the way we see things, and then we go astray from the right view, and then we end up making lot of mistakes and get entangled, and that's how we get obscured. So Manjushri's question was, how do we get obscured? How does the obscuration come? And then the answer from the Buddha is, through desire, you'll be obscured. Through anger, you'll be obscured. Through ignorance, you'll be obscured. Now this much we all understand, isn't it? But then the next one says, through diligence, you get obscured. Through patience, you get obscured. Through generosity, you get obscured. Through samadhi, meditation, you get obscured. Through wisdom, you get obscured. The richness of the Buddha's wisdom. And even, this is like glimpse of the richness of the Buddha's wisdom. Since we are talking about the reign of wisdom. And this is so much kept alive by the follower of Buddha. In every level, in action, in words, in deeds, in their lifestyle. And there's something good about, there's good about Vajrayana Buddhism especially. One would think, usually religious founder are always in the form of someone who is serene, bare feet, looks really good, bare feet, and begging bowl, and kind of very gentle looking, very humble looking. And therefore, the disciples also has to sort of follow suit. You understand? And this is something incredible about Buddha Dharma. Even if you look at the figures and the people that the characters, if you like, within the Buddhist world, we have great beings like Shariputra, who obviously must be barefoot and begging bowl and all of that. But we also have great beings like Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara, who are much more well decorated than you guys. Earring, nose rings, anklet, bracelets, probably lipsticks too. Really well, so elegant, rich, very, very, like rings in almost every finger, like that. But then, in the Vajrayana, what I'm saying is, the model, the Buddhist model, like someone whom you look up to. You understand? Someone whom you look up to. These are important. These are really important because otherwise, and this is an old joke that I always bring, but here, out of necessity, I have to bring it again. Otherwise, we always get stuck with things like Cigar and Monica Lewinsky situation. You understand? Morality is like the utmost. President should never use a cigar that way. You understand? That kind of benchmark. But in Buddhism, there's a benchmark like Shariputra. Then there's people like Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara. So the benchmark is very, okay, and which one now? And more surprisingly, we also have great beings like Telopa. And as I was saying, just like how Buddha answered to Manjushri, when Manjushri, what obscures us? Incredible answer. And this was not only a grand philosophical, intellectual talk, but people actually lived with that spirit. And back to our forefather here, just the lifestyle of the Telopa alone should make you feel there is a hope. Because, this guy, he achieved realization. This is incredible, so encouraging, I think. Is daytime he was beating sesame seed, squeezing oil out of it. And nighttime, I think, he was ushering men to his boss, a prostitute. He was, not pimp. Is it pimp? Oh, he was yes. That was his job. He was escorting men, pimping, basically. And his other part-time job was extracting oil from the sesame seed. This should give you encouragement. Because at least you do much more politically correct thing. Your job is much more, very sober but Telopa is actually the great, great grandfather of this lineage. Just his lifestyle, just what he did and what he achieved alone. This is why I got carried away the earlier. Just if you think about these things, you cannot forget these people. You cannot afford to do it. You have to sing his songs. You have to live according to how he instructed. We must try. We have to try this one. You might, in the future, you might follow some very, serene, politically correct lineage and all of that. You will not even get close to this, I'm telling you. You will not even get close. Yes, you might win some medals for, having done some really good social work or, nothing. They mean nothing. They mean absolutely useless. They are useless. But this, such an encouragement, don't you think? Telopa's. And in the process of extracting oil from sesame seed, and his song, this is the song, he has many songs, he has many dohas, and this happened to be one of it. That is in the Gaju Gurso, we call it Gurso, the ocean of songs, basically, or the collection of songs. And it is so appropriate because Instead of going through word by word, maybe I'll just put it in a kind of try to put it in a nutshell. Extracting oil from the sesame seed, using that whole, because that's his part-time job. If we have enough merit, I'm sure he could really lay out a really incredible analogy and a metaphor of a path based on pimping, I'm sure. But for now, because we are such a being that is doomed in this box, so extracting the oil from sesame seed sounds much more safe than jobs such as pimp's job. So we have, because of and this much merit we have, so we now have the song about using the metaphor of sesame seed and the oil, and it's incredible if you read this. See, when you look at a sesame seed, it doesn't remotely look like oil. Doesn't remotely look like oil. It's a sesame seed. But with the right pounding, or I don't know, with the right cause and condition, oil comes. And this is what Kaju forefather. Remember I was talking about, we kind of believe in no pain, no gain. But that's fine, that's good. That's sober way of thinking. But the daringness to think complete gain without any pain, in order to really have that confidence, you need to have the wisdom to look at something that remotely doesn't look like an oil, but I can do something with this. I can actually, for a telopa kilo, like a handful of sesame seed means oil. And this is important because, like you and me, we remotely look like Buddha. We don't look like, we don't act like, we don't think like, but just like sesame seed, with the right cause and condition, with the right way of pounding it and squeezing it and extracting whatever, we can extract. Maybe is not the right word. In this level, but to share with you this particular song, I have once in Parochichu in Bhutan. We were doing rituals, pujas for royal family. And during the break, I was reading Kaju Gunso. I always like reading, actually not just me, many people love reading Kaju Gunso, and especially Milarepa's songs. Because Also, I mean, of course, aside from the fact that it has, it's a complete path, but many of these songs are very, what do you call it? It's very moving. So I remember that actually many younger generation, young Rinpoches, we used to really love reading these. And of course ask Jabji Chense Rinpoche. And during the break, we talked about this, this particular song. And we talked about ice and water. And this is quite an amazing, which to celebrate and just to appreciate the song, I'd like to share this with you. He said, and later I found this also written in Jabji Chense Rinpoche's his own advice to one of his students, I don't remember. Anyway, he said that we are like a thirsty people, and looking for water, but we are holding an ice in our hand, and we are frantically looking for water everywhere. Little do we realize that if we can relax and have confidence, this ice is water. When it melts, then it becomes water. Likewise, and we were talking about this particular song, connecting to the, sesame seed and all that. This very mind that we have right now, the one that thinks, one that hears, one that, wanders, one that gets distracted, one that gets frustrated for being distracted. All of this very mind is the wisdom. Yes, it is frozen because we are frantic, we are paranoid, and we are frantically looking for a way out. And this paranoia and frantically moving here and there just makes this ice even more icier, I think. So, only thing we could do, if only we know how to relax, you will realize this very mind is the wisdom. So here, as I was saying, there are so many paths, so many doctrines, so many spiritual paths, but very few mentions the inseparability of solution and problem. Problem is the solution, solution is the problem. This inseparability, this is one way of sharing the wisdom of our forefathers. And it is very relevant today. It's not like arcade, outdated. Now, more than ever, we need to read these songs. Now, more than ever, we need to know that this ice will become water. And as far as ice is concerned, we have plenty. This is what we need to realize. Very good. This at least managed to summarize one song. I got a little bit carried away earlier, but because I need to justify this. The reason why I got carried away. I was reading the colophon, and I was thinking about these things, and and then suddenly, I don't know, Lama Kangshar came into my mind, and I asked Larry to send me Lama Kangshar's songs, and when I was reading, then I suddenly thought, wow, it would be a tragic if you younger generations forget Lama Kangshar. This is someone who you can be proud of. You can claim to be his grandchildren. It would be a shame if you forget this. So that's why I got carried away. Okay, do you have any questions? Can't be, right? Is there any question? Do you want to ask questions? Should we have questions and answers? Yeah? Okay.
Rinpoche?
Yes.
You were talking about the importance of not dropping tradition totally because of how important that is, but also not using the tradition to support what actually has to be given up in your life. I think I'm paraphrasing.
Yes.
Okay. Recently I saw you were writing or have written a book, Not About Happiness. And I think it's, from the little I know, it was about the 4 foundation practices. I've been talking to a few people who are students of mine, and I've just been teaching, Hinayana, Mahayana, talking Vajrayana, but no practices. This has been for about 9 years now in the United States. I've been getting questions like, should some of my students, after doing a datin and things like that, be looking to do prostrations? I know I did prostrations with Trungpa Rinpoche and Vajrayogini practice. And I think many of his students did that. I wasn't able to answer my students really very well about how much good it did.
How much?
How much good did it do? Because I think when I did my prostrations, I did them mostly to do them, to get to the practices of what I wanted. And I may not have been the only person who did it that way.
You may be.
I may not have been the only person who did the prostrations that way. Later on, many years later, because I've been practicing on my own now, mostly just sitting and studying Trungpa's writings, I found out I had to give a lot up more personally than the Buddhist than I ever gave up doing Buddhist practices, in terms of secret thoughts that I would have about what I would like to happen with me and a woman, or me and students, or me and writing, but always coming back to myself. Only recently, some of that died down a little bit. I don't know for how long. But the prostrations and the foundation practices, and even the Vajrayogini practices, I'm almost starting to understand it more now than I did then. But some of my students say, why do we need to do prostrations? And I said, well, I would ask you.
Okay. When I have a what do you call it? Cop out question? Answer? Is it? Cop out answer.
That will do.
Okay. But I think the prostration, the spirit of prostration is supposedly you to work with your ego and the pride. So prostration, which generally came from Indian tradition of bowing down, you especially putting your forehead at the feet of somebody's foot, at the on the really lowest ground, all your limbs basically, meaning that you are really surrendering and you are really just basically you are crushing your ego, you're crushing your pride. So to the certain extent, maybe this might still work for the Western culture also. I feel, like not many people would put your head down like someone's feet. This is the sort of cop-out answer. That this is like, I'm sorry to going back to the, I was talking about the jihadi thing. Remember, this is where Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche's, he was, to us, this is supported by my own teacher, Jabji Tengku Chensa Rinpoche. He was a terton, meaning he was like a treasure discoverer. Now we need terton, someone who could really bring appropriate technique. Until, like, if you're asking me whether I would invent one, I will not. Not necessarily because I'm so, only thinking about the dharma and all of that. I don't think like this all the time. But purely because I don't want to be, I don't want people to find out my true color towards the end. People always find out. When you are a hawk, is it? When you are, hawk. People always find out, and I don't want to do that. I want to be very careful. I will not be able to invent any methods. Until then, I think the prostration does have the effect of surrendering, putting down your, whole limb, especially the most supreme part of your body, which is supposedly the head. But I don't know whether it works with the Western culture, but I feel that it might still do. So that's why.
Okay, thank you. Can I just say one other thing?
Okay.
I know it's supposed to be dealing with pride, but when I see real life situations, oftentimes the problems people come to me with are often they're married and they're having an affair. And if anybody finds out, there's going to be, something to pay. There's going to be hell to pay. People are going to be very, very upset about relationships and possessiveness and the pride that's involved. Seems to me, when we do prostrations, oftentimes I think that's giving up our pride to a teacher and to Buddhism.
Right.
But in real life, oftentimes what I find the major problems that I'm being asked to talk something about are relationship problems. And and everybody says, well, are we allowed to have an open relationship, or do we have to have a monogamous relationship? And I don't really believe either one is particularly that interesting.
And then?
But I notice that that's where most of the anger and most of the pride, that if you don't want to just be with me, I don't want to be with you. So I'm not sure that even among the people who I have seen, who have done prostrations, and many people in the West have now done this, that it's actually addressed some of these really, really in the house problems.
Yeah, another thing about prostration. Prostration is the sort of the outer form of chamdro, which is taking refuge, isn't it? This is when usually you do the prostration as part of the foundation practice. You do the prostration as part of the chamdro, the refuge. It would help, I think, for the modern practitioners really to understand the fundamental, the principle of taking refuge. And that means a lot. And actually that will work. That's not really culturally bound at all. Because when you are talking about taking refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, let's say Dharma, taking refuge to the Dharma basically means like accepting the truth that all compounded things are impermanent, all emotions are pain, all that. So trying to really genuinely surrendering to these facts definitely should have effect on pride. Because you have to. Not being able to really accept these truths will always strengthen pride. So I think modern practitioners, if they could really invest their time and energy in understanding the principle of the refuge, which is really chewing the hard truth of impermanence, emotion, selflessness and all of that, that should do it. If that doesn't do it, then we have no hope.
Okay. Thank you, Rinpoche.
Okay. Okay.
Hi. So first of all, thank you for being here and for sharing your words with us. My father and I are here from Ottawa for your teachings as well as for a math conference. And we are both very intrigued by what you said a little bit earlier about how not everybody can be Tibetan, but how anybody can become enlightened and possibly even overnight. And I'd like to learn a little bit more about that. And specifically, what does enlightenment mean to you?
That's a very good question. I almost wanted to relate your question to one of the songs, but for now, yes, most of the time we all say we are practicing the Dharma and for enlightenment. And most of the time we don't know what that is. We kind of vaguely think it has to be good, isn't it? Can't be bad. And usually this comes from the feeling, I guess, and which is very important. Feeling is very important. Another thing which is probably slightly better is because you have seen the uselessness and the futility of what we have, the samsaric life. So there has to be something more meaningful. This is always a good beginning. Okay. Now to answer your question, okay. 2 levels. Okay, I will just give you as an example. 2 levels. On the more general level, people do meditation like shamatha vipassana. By doing shamatha and vipassana again and again and again, what it does is shamatha and vipassana together makes your mind malleable and less obsessive, let's say. So for instance, if you have been doing shamatha for, let's say, about 3 weeks, let's say prior to that, you have this obsession in ironing your underwear. You understand? Which is, in a way, very ridiculous. You don't really need to do this. But that is, obsessions usually don't have logic. But that's your habit. So now, after 3 weeks, maybe you don't really care about ironing it. After maybe 6 weeks, you don't even wash it, maybe. That is already a little bit of enlightenment there. This is on a very general level. You understand? Okay. Now on the much more sort of a profound level, but very similar logic here. We are entangled by certain thoughts and values and things like that, like not certain, lot of things, we are entangled. Yeah? Okay, I will, since we are using this text, I'm coming back to this again. Hold this lineage of Dakbokaju lineage emerged with the help of a shoe. A shoe, shoe? Yes. Telopa hit Naropa's head with that. And, he got it, so to speak. And he got what? That's the question, isn't it? He got what? Basically, all the entanglement, everything that used to be important, not so important. Everything that used to be this is not this. Everything, basically all entanglement becomes, it will not entangle you. So, how would you still react with other people? Exactly as how a mother would wholeheartedly play with a kid building a sandcastle. When the sandcastle collapses, if necessary, mother might even pretend crying. And this is good. And that's really possible. And overnight business is a bit of a, that we are asking a lot, but it is very possible. It is very possible with the help of the great tantric masters. Oh yeah, very possible. The lineage is still alive, as Nyingmapas would usually put it. The warmth of the breath of the Dakini is still there. So this is the fortune of us sentient beings. It's still alive. Okay. Sorry for getting carried away in the earlier part. So we could only finish this. I think I have something else to do tonight, such as, I don't know. Yeah, do you want to do?